When I first started out, the fact that I was doing anything allowed me to be successful because, most people weren't selling online, but that was easy at the start. And then when the competition became strong, you had to really differentiate yourself. Then video came along in 2007. I was an early adopter of YouTube, and I had to switch to selling workout videos because people didn't want to just get like a PDF. They wanted to get actual follow-along videos and so on and so forth. And I just got tired of reinventing myself in the fitness industry. I didn't love the fitness industry. The claims of the fitness industry have always been, excessive, but they got even worse every year that I was in it, very extreme. And by the end, it wasn't easy because the fitness business was doing about $5.5 or $6 million a year. And I shut that down almost overnight and went to coaching entrepreneurs, which was very challenging.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Building a Better Business. Today, our guest is Craig Ballantyne. He's the coach of one of our recent guests. If you heard the last episode, Chris Larson from Next Level Income was on, and he came highly recommended. Craig, welcome to the show. We're excited to have you and excited to jump into some of your background.
Hey, this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, for guys, if you don't know who Craig is, so he's a coach and entrepreneur. He's built 5 7-figure businesses, written 3 different books, and has mentored thousands of business owners across the world. So we wanted to bring him on, not only because Chris suggested and said this guy is one of the smartest, most amazing men that he's ever come in contact with. I think you've been on his show 4 times, which
quite a bit.
That's a lot. So we wanted to bring you on to talk a little bit about what you do, some of the things you've learned working with business owners and scaled your own businesses, and then see if we can create a couple gold nuggets for viewers as we go along. So where we typically start is really at the beginning. I want to hear how you got into this industry, how you went from point A of jumping into coaching, jumping into training and being an entrepreneur to where you are today. And we can kind of pick that apart and start and stop along the way, if that sounds good for you.
Yeah, totally. So, I grew up in Canada in a small town, and up here you drink beer and play hockey, or you play hockey and then drink beer, didn't matter. And, but both of those were very impactful on my story. So I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach in the National Hockey League of all things. And I have quite introverted tendencies by nature, and to bring that energy onto the training floor was difficult for me. So I actually became a personal trainer, and then I had a lucky break where I started writing for Men's Health magazine at the age of 25. I had an email newsletter back in 2000, way back then.
Early
And
internet.
yeah, man. And, I sold my first program on the internet, a workout program, for $69.95. It was a Word document. So again, another lesson there for people is you got to bootstrap your way up. And I sold it through PayPal. I didn't even have a website. And that was a big deal to me. It showed that I could do it. But the thing that happened in 2000 was I sent one of my email newsletters to the fitness editor of Men's Health magazine, and he put me in the magazine, which was huge. So it gave me a term that I think every entrepreneur has to have, which is critical credibility. So critical credibility could be anything from a column in your local newspaper to a magazine article to a 30-second interview on a radio station to having a book, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You need that critical credibility because it's like a crowbar that you use to leverage and open up doors. I use that to grow a little bit of fame in the fitness industry. And of course, the internet, people were starting to buy things off the internet back in 2000. And so I started selling these workout programs. And I did that for about 15 years. And we sold almost 1 million workout programs, workout videos, all these things. I have probably about 25 million views of my YouTube videos. I did all this stuff in the fitness industry. Along the way, the binge drinking led to me having severe anxiety attacks in 2006. And I went through that. I turned over every rock that I possibly could, aside from medication, to get rid of the anxiety. And I wrote a book called Unstoppable about how to overcome anxiety as an entrepreneur. So I built these tools that allowed me to do that. And then in 2007, people started asking me like, you're so productive. How do you get all this stuff done? Can you coach me in my business and show me what you're doing? So I had my first business seminar in 2007, started off in the fitness industry, and eventually entrepreneurs from all types of industries, from construction to farming to real estate. A lot of real estate investors are in my world. All came asking the same sort of stuff. How do you do this? How do you build the teams? How do you have an online presence? That sort of stuff. So I switched out of the fitness industry into business coaching in 2015. And, there's a great lesson here. It's like a lot of people are like, how did you do that? I was like, I just did it because I wanted to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, because a lot of people get hung up on the, the legacy that they have or the brand or the image. And it's like, listen, you take a look at, Madonna has reinvented herself 100 times in the, and everybody has and everybody can, and you can switch from one thing to another. And that's the thing is just don't pigeonhole yourself. Like even earlier, I said I have introverted tendencies. I used to say I was an introvert, but that puts you in a box. And then inside that box, you have these excuses to not go and be your best self. So over the years, I then wrote in 2015, I wrote a book called The Perfect Day Formula about structuring your day for maximum productivity. That was the one that introduced me to Chris and really helped him go from being a medical device salesperson to a real estate investor
Yeah.
through the structure and routine. Then I wrote the Unstoppable book. And then I wrote what I think is probably the best book for people to start with, which was The Perfect Week Formula, because Perfect Day Formula was the wrong book. I got a million questions about it. Not every day is the same. And so we
Yeah.
we wrote that one next. And then was really heavy into coaching during the pandemic. And then in last year, I wrote another book called The Dark Side of Discipline,
Yeah.
which we just released. So
I love that.
yeah, that's my journey.
I'm excited to talk about the dark side of discipline as we go along because there's a lot there that I think people will can take out of that, but also I would guess that there's probably some myths that need to be busted when it comes to the what discipline means and what it isn't actually, and so we'll get into that. But I want to go back to this reinventing yourself. Is that something that you find that you often have to do, or your clients often need to do in order to either continue in what they're currently doing or in getting into the new stage of life? Like how often do you find you're kind of walking people through that?
Well, if we go to my fitness years, I definitely had to reinvent myself a couple of times. Like offers, in the online marketing world, your offer can work for a few years. In most cases, it kind of burns out. You go through the entire population that might see it through Facebook ads or something like that, and you need to come up with something new. At the same time, technology is advancing and the competition is growing much stronger. And so when I first started out, the fact that I was doing anything allowed me to be successful because, most people weren't selling online. Not a lot of people were
Yeah.
buying online, but, most people were not selling online. They didn't know how to do it. But that was easy at the start. And then when the competition became strong, you had to really differentiate yourself. Then video came along in 2007. I was an early adopter of YouTube and I had to switch to selling workout videos because people didn't want to just get like a PDF. They wanted to get actual follow along videos and so on and so forth. And I just got tired of reinventing myself in the fitness industry. I didn't love the fitness industry. The claims of the fitness industry have always been, excessive, but they got even worse every year that I was in it, very extreme. And by the end, it was just over the top. And so I didn't want to continue on in that world and hadn't for a long time. So I then reinvented myself with something I was much more interested in.
Yeah.
It wasn't easy because the fitness business was doing about 5.5 or $6 million a year. And I shut that down almost overnight and went to coaching entrepreneurs, which was very challenging to get going. So 2016 was a tough year for me, but in the long run, it was the right decision. So I would say that there's definitely a cycle of every couple of years. And, whether you want to take a look at like, what's the analogous industry? Well, you can say like Tesla first, when they came out, they had whatever their first car was. I'm not a huge Tesla fan, so
Yeah.
I don't remember. But they started out, I think, with like the really fast one, and then they went to like the smaller models, and then the X, and then they went, to the Cybertruck. And I don't know what's next for Tesla, but they are reinventing and coming out with new things all the time.
Yeah.
So it's unlikely that you're going to be Coca-Cola, who should never have reinvented, but they're like the one never reinvent,
Yeah.
when they did. But actually, it's not true because Coke Zero reinvents itself. First of all, they had Diet Coke, and then they had Coke Zero, and then Coke Zero went from black can to red can, which
Mhm.
I'm a big black can fan, so I didn't like it. But very few companies can stay almost the same, like a cigarette company, and so especially in this day and age where in a lot of cases, the entrepreneur and the business are almost, where does the entrepreneur stop and the business at? Where
Sure.
does the business? And so reinventing because things are changing fast. And now that AI is here, if you weren't reinventing before, you're gonna have
Yeah.
no choice.
Yeah. The reason I ask is like we talked about before we started the show is at Skyline Point Capital, we serve business owners who are looking to invest in real estate, invest in other businesses. And where we typically intersect a lot of these business owners is they're well-established businesses, and they're coming to the end of a chapter, right? They're coming to the end of either owning their business, or they're getting ready to sell it, or they're getting ready to hand off the reins to maybe somebody they've been mentoring. And to your point of, like, where the business owner starts and where the business starts, it kind of is a very gray, muddled up line. There's really no, like, delineation between the 2, and for a lot of, I think, entrepreneurs, either who are in that stage of, like, getting ready to sell or handing it off or whatever, a change in some season of their life, their identity gets wrapped up in this, and, like, "This is who I was for 20 years. Like, I'm a business owner. I run this thing. Now what do I do with my time?" And we found, and I even had this in my own life of, I used to own creative agencies. I exited those, sold to my partner, and to the outside, people were thinking, "W Did that not work? Like, did you have to sell them? Did you guys not succeed? And now you're in real estate. Like, did you fail and now you're pivoting?" Like, even me going through that reinvention was a difficult one. And so I can imagine there's probably to my original question, there's probably a lot of times where you have to walk people through, like, the stages of life and how they coexist with work.
Yeah, well, what I think is really important is that you have to remember who really matters in all of
Mm,
this, and explaining it to friends and family, they're just nosy and curious, and at the end of the day, they are not gonna really understand anyways, and they don't know inside the business, so you have to have that thick skin and just forget about them. All that really matters are the people that are, what Fern Harnish would call stakeholders in the business, which is, the team members, the customers, and yourself, and any other investor in the business, and make the right decisions for all those people, and the rest of the world be darned,
yeah,
so the thing. What I think that people do get hung up on is that they have their identity not only tied to the business, but tied to the habits and routines that come with it. And if you are someone who has ran a business for 20 years and it was, like clockwork, you were up at this time, you were in your car by this time, through Starbucks drive-through at this time, and it gets ingrained in your nervous system. And when it ends, this can be a point where there's some depression that sets in individuals,
mhm,
and, because you're like a dog that doesn't have a ball to chase
yeah,
anymore, and they go and start, getting into trouble in some cases. But this is also why, unfortunately, there's a lot of mental health problems in men over the age of 65 who retire from any type of job. And all of a sudden, they just simply don't know what to do with their time, and it can end up in a very bad situation. So when somebody's thinking of exiting the business, I know a lot of energy goes into the exiting the business, and oh my gosh, all the due diligence and everything that goes along with that. But you have to already be on your next chapter, whether it's a passion project, whether it's like, hey, I'm not working, I'm going to be writing books, whatever it is, you really need to be thinking about that so that you can smoothly transition into it next. Because I'm sure you've worked with people who are like, yeah, okay, I'm just going to play golf, and it's like, 7 days later, they're like,
yeah,
this is not what I'm doing for the rest of my
no,
life.
no, yeah, I mean, I think after exiting my last, companies, I was like, "Oh, I could take a couple months off," and I think it was, like, 2 weeks, and my wife and I are both like, "This is not working." You gotta figure something out because you're not happy, and I think that's a lot of entrepreneurs, they gotta find, to your point, a passion project or something to pour themselves into, and
We also see it a lot in people that go from corporate to entrepreneur
sure.
because it's, the corporate, it kind of reminds me of Shawshank Redemption. If you remember that movie with it, where oh man, I forget what the guy's name is that gets out of jail. What if it was real? I'm blanking on his Freeman, right?
Yeah,
Morgan Freeman.
Morgan
Morgan Freeman gets out of jail, right? And he's like, he can't go pee, in the grocery he's working in the grocery store, he can't go pee because he only went pee on a buzzer or something when he was in jail for, like, 55 years, the person who's in corporate switching over to the side hustle, when all of a sudden you go from, "Hey, listen, you gotta be in your desk from these hours to these hours, and, you get a lunch from 12 to 12, till 12:59," like, all of a sudden when you go like, "Hey, you can do anything you want all day long," this is where a lot of people get real
yeah,
messed up because the next thing you know, it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. They haven't actually accomplished anything, but they've been busy as heck. And so
Mhm.
it's the structure and routine that you need. And you use that as a tool. You use that as a tool, like we use money as a tool to give us our freedom and our success. And so you have to use those I don't want to call them discipline. You have to use systems.
Sure.
Put the systems in place to guide you towards success.
Yeah. And I for transparency, I have not read The Perfect Week, but I imagine that's sort of what The Perfect Week gets into is some of the systems and tools.
Totally.
Okay, can you kinda break that down? Like, what like, at a high level, 10,000-foot view, like, what are some of those things that make for a perfect week?
Yeah, so the way we set this up is imagine your week as a 7 by 7 grid, 7 days and 7 blocks of about 2 to 3 hours. That's the way that one should look at their time generally, because it's best to do things in blocks and batches rather than, you see these. I see these calendars that people post, whether it's on LinkedIn or something like, "Hey, look at my calendar today, real busy." It's like a unicorn ate a rainbow and vomited up some Skittles, right? Like nobody wants that. Because if you have that type of, 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here, 30 minutes here, jumping from one thing, it's death by a thousand cuts. You never get anything done. Sure, you're busy as heck and you might look and feel important, but there's no white space on the calendar. And white space on the calendar and white space in the brain is what the entrepreneur must pursue in order to think big and make big decisions that move us forward.
Yeah.
So if you think of that 7 by 7 grid, most people will then think, okay, great. All right, I get that. I'm going to go and, schedule my time. No, what we do is we're going to put some boundaries in place. And so we actually force our clients to go and put their non-negotiable family and workout and, kind of recovery stuff on the calendar. So, Saturday afternoon is family time, all day Sunday is family time. And, uh, you know, Tuesday and Thursday, I have to leave at this time. Wednesday night is date night, so I'm done at 5 o'clock. And these are the hard boundaries, non-negotiables. And I'm going to schedule in a workout at 12 o'clock every day, 3 days a week, or I'm going to schedule my workout in at 7 o'clock 3 days a week, or whatever it is
Mm.
that you put on there first. And so the analogy is that people may have heard this story in one way or another that there's a jar and you put the rocks in, big rocks in first, then you put the pebbles, and you put the sand. Because if you do it the other way, the sand being, worthless tasks, a lot of us can fill our days with worthless tasks. And when I was a single entrepreneur, I could work all the hours in the days, and I often would, but there really wasn't that much accomplishment. And, I would just, if I had an empty night on my calendar, I would just fill that void with
Yeah.
work stuff, but it wasn't really helpful. So there's another way you can look at this is, it's like you have a box of 168 hours, and we want you to, put your 7 or 8 hours of sleep in there every night, put your workouts in, put your family time in, put your date night in. And now that box is pretty full,
Yeah.
which is an excellent boundary. And do you have kids?
Yep, I have 2 daughters.
Right, and so I would imagine that when you had your daughters, they actually became the best boundaries
Mm.
forced upon you to make you more productive. Now,
Yep.
they may have caused some chaos at first when you were adjusting, but eventually they become, children become the best boundaries for us because we decide this is a non-negotiable that I'm going to be here with the kids at this time. We're going to take the vacations, and all of a sudden you're left with less time to muddle around, and you are forced to be very ruthless with your time. And when one of the things that I help people with is I go really hardcore on people, and say, pull up your calendar and justify everything that's on here. Do you need a meeting with this person every week? No. How often? You can probably meet this person
Yep.
twice a month.
Yep.
And does your meeting need to be 60 minutes, or why can't it be 45 minutes? And just like ruthlessly clawing back slivers of time, especially for that person who has that, unicorn rainbow colored calendar.
Skittles.
You you have to do that at first because right now things are so out of control that if you feel like, use your cliche or pick your cliche, your hair's on fire, you're spinning too many plates, wearing too many hats, whatever that feeling is that you describe things as, it's actually your fault because you are not taking ownership of your time. We don't manage time, we own time. And you have to look at that way. And the other phrase that is really big to me, it's a one-word change, but it's a totally different mindset, is people when they say, I'm trying to find time for this, you ain't gonna find time. It's
Mm.
not under the bed with your ab rocker by Body by Jake. They bought in 2004. It is You must make time. Make time. You make time for something that's important. So we shift that mentality around. And we, after that, after we've got, all the family stuff and now we got the boundaries, we look at where are we getting some use your terminology here. You can either use deep work blocks,
Mhm.
by Cal Newport. I
Mhm.
use the phrase magic time,
Yeah.
and doing that. And then there's a couple of things that are not sexy, but are very, very important. And, I talk about this on all the shows and so I'll do the same thing I do on
Yeah,
everybody else's
please.
shows. Like if you had to choose one specific keystone habit that predicted somebody's success, like on a daily habit,
Yeah.
what would that daily habit be?
Well, I can tell you mine. Mine is getting to bed on time. Because if
That's exactly it. You're the first person to say
Oh,
it right.
really? Okay, good.
Because because if you don't get to bed on time, you either get up feeling tired or you get up and you hit snooze, and then you hit snooze, and then you hit snooze, and the next thing you know, you're like, oh, now you're getting out of bed late, and then you're over caffeinating, and then you're getting into traffic late, which means you're using that discipline and willpower that you need throughout the day. You're using it not to get angry at the person in front of you. And so by the time you get to the office, you snap at Sally, and then the rest of the day's downhill because you're cleaning up that tension. By the time you get home, you're like that close to kicking the dog because it
Yeah,
took your shoe.
yeah.
And it's all because you got to bed late last night and you didn't get up on time. So getting to bed on time, when I talk to somebody who's had a tough week and is very disorganized, I'd say, tell me about your nighttime routines. Did you get to bed on time or, were you out late, business dinners? And
On
it's
your phone
always
in
that.
bed. Yeah. Yeah, I've found to your exact point, like, I've got a good morning routine, but it's only as good as my night routine. Like, if I'm in bed by 10:30, if I'm reading or if I'm talking to my wife or if I'm, if I have to be on the phone, I at least have grayscale on, so it's like the blue lights aren't coming through.
Yeah.
But if the lights are out and I'm asleep by 10:30, ideally 11 at the latest, I'm up early. I'm getting in the word. I'm working out. I'm getting some alone time because, to your point, my daughters are up at 7:30 in the morning, and I start work at 9, so I have that blocked off. That is a no-fly zone for me, like a
Right.
non-negotiable, as you said. 8 to 9, I'm playing with my daughters because once I'm locked in my office, I usually don't come out for anything at all. So, yeah, I've found that to be the most detrimental to my entire day is not getting to bed on time.
Yeah. And that's what it is. And, it's not sexy. It doesn't make for great social media content, YouTube videos, Instagram reels compared to a
So
cold
funny.
plunge. But if somebody listening to this is going, I just feel like I'm on the verge of something big, but I don't know, I'm self-sabotaging or I'm really frustrated, I'm really overwhelmed. Just get to bed on time for the next 21 days, every single night, the same time. Go to bed
Mhm.
for the next 21 days. Your energy will be through the roof, provided you get up at the same time
Yeah.
too. Your energy will be through the roof. You'll feel far more organized. You won't have those days that are like a 11 out of 10 fire alarm. And you'll be like, I'm starting to take control of my life here.
Yeah.
And that's what you need to recalibrate.
I wanna jump to your comment on, deep work or magic time.
Sure.
Before I do you have any suggestions on how someone can figure out their ideal time to go to sleep? Because 7, 8 hours in any window is not the same. Like, for me, it's 10:30 to 6, but how do you have a recommendation on how to find that time for each person?
Well, I mean, that's simply just a matter of testing and tracking your time. I mean, someone should know. And this time kind of ties into the next thing that we're going to talk about, which is that magic time or deep work time. Like so let's start there. Let's
Yeah.
just say like you should identify the time of day when you have the greatest creativity, energy, and um, well, basically your and productivity.
Yeah.
And so that time of day then needs to be protected. And then we can reverse engineer. Well, if it's 7 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock in the morning, man, I am just like unbelievably productive. And there's not an issue with family time, then that's the time that you have to ruthlessly protect. Or if it's, as long it's the first hour of my day, doesn't matter what time I get up. Okay, well, we work around other things. So like, if you have to start taking calls at 9 o'clock and, you have your kids from 7:30 to 9, then you need to get up probably about 5:30 in the morning, work from 6 till 7. That's probably the
Yep.
best.
Yep.
And if it's another time of day, we just reverse engineer it. And then in order to get up at 5:30 in the morning, you need to be asleep by 10 o'clock
Yeah.
probably at night. So then what you need to do in order to get to bed on time, so it doesn't matter what time, the stuff is in the morning. Once people have found their ideal bedtime, what they need to do is use a reverse alarm. So the most important alarm on your phone is not the time of day that you get up, but it's the time of day that's an hour before you need to be asleep. So you set that reverse alarm and you turn off all the electronics. So if I want to get to bed at 10, at 9 o'clock, the alarm goes off. I turn off all the electronics, TV, laptop, iPad,
Smart.
and mobile phone. So all those things are off. And now, like, you're going to run out of things to do in about 40 minutes, right? You can talk to your spouse and you can talk to your kids and you can make your lunch, you can read a book and,
Yeah.
you get in a shower, you can meditate, all that sort of stuff. But you're going to run out of stuff pretty quick and you're going to feel tired.
Mm.
And that means you're actually going to get to bed on time. You might even get to bed early and then you're going to get up a little bit early. And everybody knows that when they get up even just 5 minutes earlier than normal, it's a totally different day.
Yep. I love that. Well, let's talk about the Magic Time deep work. Let's For people who haven't read Cal Newport's book, can you kind of walk through the psychology of blocking off those? I think you did 2 to 3 hour windows. The 7x7 box. Like, what is the significance of that? Because those as entrepreneurs, we are everything at all times, and we've got all of our email inboxes up. We got Slack up. We've got like you said, death by a million.
Death by a thousand cuts through that transition time, which
Yeah.
is the problem.
Yeah.
So what we need to do is we need to take a look at all of our meetings and we need to compress them back to back as much as possible with small breaks in there. Our phone calls, whatever other interactions with other people, we need to put those in blocks so that now you don't have the meeting and then you have an hour where you think you're going to get deep work and then another hour later you have to go and do something. And so deep work, I haven't even read the book, to be honest with you, because I know I get the
You
concept,
got the concept. Yeah.
and I've got my own version of it, which is really it's that you're looking for blocks over the course of the day where you have the greatest mental power.
Mhm.
And, just like when you were a kid or when you have kids, they all have that toy where you take the square peg and you put it in the square hole. Well, inside the magic time or deep work, you need to take your hardest mental task and you have to fit it in there. And when you match that up, you're going to be more productive, even if you don't work longer hours. Because if you tried to do the same thing, that same mentally taxing activity, when you were in a low energy trough, like maybe right after lunch, in most cases for a lot of people, it's going to take you 3 times as long. So all you have to do is match that stuff up properly where you have a good block of time. Probably, you're looking at a minimum 90 minutes.
Yeah.
2 to 3 hours is a little bit long without some type of break in there, but 90 minutes where you can really get deep into the problem, whether it's analyzing a real estate deal, whether it's analyzing numbers on a business, whether it's creating something, writing a book chapter, whatever it is, you really need to it's almost like a Rubik's Cube, right?
Yeah.
We're just making sure we're lining things up properly. And you got to know that through your self-reflection and introspection, knowing your times of day when you're most creative and productive.
Yeah.
And if it's from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. every single day, and you're like, but I have to have certain, meetings on Monday or Tuesday or I got a meeting there. Okay. It's all right. It's all right. It's not the end of the world. We get it as many days that we possibly can. And if you're so busy right now that you can only get it 1 day per week, that's okay too.
Enough. Yeah.
Start there and work your way into automation and delegation and elimination of all the other stuff so that you do start getting a second day and then a third day. And then, ultimately the goal is to have a whole lot of white space on the calendar. And that, as Naval Ravikant says, that's kind of when you've hit freedom. That's
Yeah.
true wealth.
100%. Could not agree with that more. I think one of the things that I struggled with when I first started, full transparency, I read half the book, and once I got the concept, I was like, okay, I probably got it now.
Yeah.
But one of the things that stood out to me was I was struggling with that 90 to 120 minutes. Like, that seems like a hell of a lot of time for something. And one of the things I read, and I'm gonna paraphrase it, but it was, um, if you have a real problem, it should take at least 90 minutes to fully think through it and to process it and to work it. Like, it shouldn't be like a 5-minute fix or a 30-minute fix or even a 60-minute fix. Like, and if it is, it's probably not that big of a problem. It could probably be later in the day. But like that, for me at least, the morning when I do those, 90-minute, 120-minute blocks or even more sometimes, it's like this is a real problem that I've got to think through, or a real opportunity that I've got to work through. And I need to give it the full window. Because even if I get the thing done in 30 minutes, then I have, 60 more minutes to really think through it more and to poke holes through it and to let it marinate and stew and whatnot. So,
And then figure out by fixing this problem, what other problems are going to come along
exactly.
that you
Yeah,
have. I agree with that. Yeah, it might not be exactly 90 minutes. I
sure.
mean, you never know. But one thing that we tell our clients to do to kind of put this whole thing on steroids is to actually get at least a single 90-minute nature walk every week.
Mm,
Because if you go back in time and you look at Dickens and Darwin and many of the composers and, where did Newton discover gravity? Well, according to the photos, he was sitting under an apple tree. He wasn't sitting
sure.
at a desk inside. And so your brain research shows that your brain operates different in different environments. So if anybody's ever had a good idea in the shower that they couldn't come up with at their desk, it's because your brain is operating different when you're in the shower.
Hmm.
And it's the same with walking in nature, that your brain starts to take all that information that you've collected. And and one thing with these walks is you're not allowed to take the
Yeah.
AirPods and listen to something. You got too many inputs already. That's one of the biggest things that people need to stop with the inputs, not with this podcast, but stop with all the other inputs, because you've got enough stuff in there and you need to go back and you need to start connecting the dots. And a walk in nature, man, that's an absolute game changer, because your brain is going to be operating differently. It's going to be more creative and it will process all of those things. And it will come up with some really, really great ideas. Now, you
Yeah.
can take something to write down the notes and stuff, but doing that is an excellent addition to those 90-minute blocks at least once per week.
Yeah. I love that. Well, you kind of touched on big problems earlier, so I want to go to something I've heard from you, and you often talk about applying, as you say, level 10 effort to level 10 problems.
Mhm.
And talk about entrepreneurs, a lot of them, even if they've got a well established, successful business, still find themselves spinning more plates than they probably should at any one time. So, how do we figure out what our actual level 10 problem is?
That's the thing, that you're waking up in the morning and, it's cloudy out and you're like, "Oh, man, weather kinda sucks," and all of a sudden you start thinking about the thing that's really bothering you. Like,
Yeah.
what is that thing that's giving you anxiety? And a lot of times it's a difficult conversation. And humans just love to avoid difficult conversations. So in most cases, your level 10 problem in your business is a difficult conversation, whether it's with a team member, a big customer, a business partner. Man, like, people will just do anything. They'll go through all types of mental gymnastics to justify not having the conversation that they need to have. And it's just generally the same in the personal life too, whether it's, your marriage is a little cold because you've turned into Uber drivers for your kids and you never see your partner enough, and you know that it's not there anymore, but oh man, it's going to take so much to turn the marriage around. So I'm just going to go and start doing triathlons or something. Like, that's what people do.
Yeah.
And it's so ridiculous. And everybody here listening to this is like, oh yeah, I have a friend who does this. Yeah, it's really easy to see this avoidance behavior in others,
Mhm.
but it's very difficult for us to see avoidance behavior in ourselves. But once we're willing to get honest with ourselves about what's the level 10 problem, and, like, in early April, it's always Texas, right? It's like sometimes it's an obvious one. But once you've identified the level 10 problem in your life, the next thing you need to do is be honest with yourself and say, okay, on a scale of 1 to 10, what level of effort am I putting into my level 10 problem? So if
Mhm.
I have a business partner who man, we were friends, we started a business, and we got successful, and now it just seems like he is not carrying his weight. He hardly comes around the office anymore. He's not being in the team meetings. He's skipping the quarterly meetings. And like, man, and you let this go on for a while and it's building up, and you're like, a molehill has become a mountain and you're not doing anything about it. And it's
Yeah.
probably like you're putting a level 2 or 3 effort into it.
Yeah.
Once in a while you might say, hey, can you come to the meeting? And but then that's all you're doing. We gotta step that up. So the next step for any level 10 problem in your life is to write down 10 to 20 bullet points of what would it look like for you to put a level 10 effort into your level 10 problem. Okay? So if we stick with the marriage one, right now, your marriage is cold, whatever, and you hardly see your partner and spouse. Maybe you buy some flowers on Valentine's Day, and maybe you buy her something on Mother's Day, but like, that's a level 2 effort. So what would it look like to put a level 10 effort into getting your marriage back on track? Well, you would commit to weekly date nights. You would commit to once a month going on an overnight trip with them. You would read the 5 love languages, have her read the 5 love languages, and you commit to applying those. And I know if anybody's ever heard that book and they're like, "Oh, man, that's so cheesy." It works. I have seen it work so well in so many people. And you would, uh what some of the things like my marriage is fortunately like a 9 out of 10, but if I want to get it to an 11 out of 10, me and my wife and I did this exercise and it's like we carve out time to make sure that we have dinner together. Our kids are really young, so we feed them after we eat, but we eat together for 20 minutes. I'm introverted by nature. I don't communicate enough, so I've committed to doing more communication. We have date days. We do all of these things, and there's like you could add in some type of couples therapy. You could add in some retreats. You could just like list 10 or 20 things. Like if you had a friend whose marriage was cold, what are the 10 or 20 things you would tell them they have to do? And that advice is the advice that you need to follow yourself. And you do this for every one of your problems, whether you need to lose 30 pounds, whether you need to talk to the business partner. What would it look like for you to put a level 10 effort? Because even if you like putting a level 7 effort in, there's still more you can do. And that's the approach that we take to it, because
Yeah.
putting a level 10 effort into your level 10 problems is what we call the ultimate definition of discipline, because everything else is just entertainment. Whether you're cold plunging or working out twice a day or reading a book a week, like those are all nice things. But if they're not really significantly attacking your level 10 problem in life, they're just a perverse form of procrastination.
I love that. Okay, so I could not agree with you more about you know, especially difficult conversations. Like some of the most damage I've done to either myself or somebody else is by ignoring a conversation that should have happened a long time ago. But
Right. It only gets worse.
yeah, it only gets worse. And it's like one of those browsers, like that you have on your computer has been open for a month. It's still sapping energy out of your computer. And you're like, why is this thing not performing well? It's like, well, like for me, I've got that thought in the back of my head, a conversation that I have not had. But how do you help someone or how would you suggest someone overcomes the fear of whether it's conversation or like they're ignoring finding a new way to generate leads for their business. Like they're ignoring the big problem and they put a level 2 or level 3 effort on it. Like, how do you help them overcome that so that they address it head on and they do it early?
Well, we use a lot of worksheets in our coaching. So we recently had one where we were walking people through having a level 10 difficult conversation. And what stops people from having a difficult conversation? In most cases, it's a story
Mm.
that you're making up in your head about how the person is going to respond. So let's get this all out of your head and down on paper. So you write down what the level 10 problem is, write down what your preferred outcome is going to be, then write down what you think they're going to say in response to you bringing this up. Then, you know, you can start to take a look at how you would then address each one of the things that they're going to say so that you can walk through it and talk through it more. And then you could also say, okay, these are the things that they're going to say and they're negative about this. Then you write down how can you reframe each one of these negative things in their mind into something that's beneficial for them and for the company. Because anytime somebody wants to if you want to get somebody to commit to change, they won't commit to change unless they see it as beneficial to them. Because everybody says like, "Oh, everybody hates change." Well, listen, if you gave somebody the Powerball ticket that was the winner, would they resist that change? No,
Yeah.
they'd be okay with that change because that change is beneficial to them. So we walk through like, how is this going to be beneficial to the other person, reframed, and then we can start to build a little bit of an like how are we going to start off the conversation so it's
Mhm.
not threatening, and how are we going to act when they bring up these things? What can we do to what ways can we calm ourselves down? So it's not unlike an NFL team thinking about the first 10 plays that the other team is going to bring on
Sure.
them. They're going
Yeah.
they're going to run this. Okay, what are we going to do? And then, if they run 4 plays in a row, we're going to have some substitutions come in because, our offensive line is going to be gassed. It's just wargaming the whole thing. And you can do that for all the conversations. Now about stuff like, the lead generation type of thing, you simply have to get them to, first of all, just do the thought exercise of the 10 to 20 things that would look like the level 10 effort. And then after they're a little bit overwhelmed by that, you go, listen, because I'm a big fan of the 80-20 principle, the 80% of your results come from 20% of your efforts. So we then say, okay, of these 10 things or of these 20 things, what are the 2 to 4 of them that are going to bring you the biggest ROI on your work? All right. So it's going to be these 3 things. Great. Now, instead of you figuring out how to do them, we use the classic who, not how.
Yeah.
Who do you know, or who's in your sphere of influence, or what expert is out there that we can go to and buy back our time by investing in them and their expertise to get the results faster.
It's good.
So we just want to make this as success is simple, life is simple. Humans just like to make it complex, often because of the stories that we make up in our heads, and we want to reduce the complexity and the friction in the way of taking action.
Mhm.
And then the last thing that we ask people is always, what's the first step that we can take to start implementing this plan? Because anybody who's woken up on January 1st with a big plan for the year knows how many times that's fallen off track. And the reason why, big plans fall off track is because they seem very intimidating. If you want to lose 50 pounds, if you want to write a book, it's like, oh my gosh, where do I start? Well, what's the first step that you can take? You want to write a book? Write the title. Write the title of the book and call it a day. Great.
Yeah.
We've got a positive dopamine hit. We've got enough momentum and motivation to come back, and we're willing to do more tomorrow. And we just break it down because any big thing can be broken down. I always like to use the example of climbing Mount Everest. You don't have to invent a new way up.
Yep.
You get to go the same way everybody else did.
Yeah.
And all you have to do is put one foot in front of the other. Can you put one foot in front of the other?
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then you
One
can
more
climb
step.
Mount Everest.
I love that. It's funny. This is such a timely conversation too, because I literally had this morning of a friend had messaged me on Friday, said they wanted to chat about something. I knew what the thing was, and I wasn't that worried about it, but it weighed me down all weekend about how the conversation would go. And I had this story going in my head of what might happen in 10.
Oh, the open loop.
And yeah, and then we chatted this morning, and it was nothing. I mean, like it went so well. I mean, I knew it was gonna be about, but we talked about it and it was fine. It was nothing to worry about. We talked through it, and I'm glad we talked about it. But the whole time I'm dwelling over it. It's deteriorating my time with my family over the weekend. And it reminds me of an old quote an old mentor used to say, is that 99% of all fears, doubts, and worries never actually come true.
Right. It's
You know?
there's a great acronym for fear, right? It's false expectations appearing real.
Yeah.
And man, that can just kill you. And you mentioned before the browser analogy. Well, I use a similar analogy, like the CPU of a computer. Like if you go back, 10 or 15 years, everybody had computers. Like you knew when the computer processing unit, it was 100%, right? Nothing, your computer wouldn't work. You had too many things open. And that's the brain of the entrepreneur. And we're already, like, on a good day when we're not making up stories, we already have enough ups and downs in the day of an entrepreneur. But if you add into that your brain creating stories, it's another 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50% of your brain computing power is lost to making up stories. And it is very damaging. And that is the mark of a new entrepreneur in most cases.
Yeah.
Right, because and that's why so many entrepreneurs quit, because they're hitting the panic button. I call them PBPs, panic button pushers, that you get a refund, you get a team member that quits, and all of a sudden, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. Well, you're never gonna last
Yeah.
if your brain immediately goes to end of the world on something like that. And, hopefully those people have the resilience to get through, like, a few people quitting. I always say that, if you're gonna be an entrepreneur, you have to be prepared for the day that your spouse is gonna leave you, your dog ran away, and you got punched in the stomach.
Yeah.
It's all gonna happen on the same day.
Yep.
And you gotta show up, and you have to outperform every single person on your team, and none of them will have any sympathy for you anyways.
Yep.
And if you're not committed to, like, saying, "Okay, I'm gonna do that," then, entrepreneurship probably not for you.
Yeah, I love that. Let's talk about discipline. I know I teed it up at the very beginning. Talk about your new book, The Dark Side of Discipline, which is a tantalizing description. And I haven't read it yet, but I will, because discipline is one of those words I absolutely love. But I also always think about discipline as structure, oftentimes associated with pain. And so I want to talk about this because I feel like there's a lot of I don't want to call them myths, but like misinterpretations of what
Sure.
discipline looks like, especially for the entrepreneur. So can you kind of walk us through not only what the book is about, but why write it to begin with?
Yeah, it's a great question. And so um, I wrote it because one of my friends went way down the rabbit hole on these online discipline challenges. So here's a guy, before he even started these online challenges, he was married with 3 beautiful kids, beautiful wife, great family, beautiful house in Toronto, Canada, where I was living at the time, great business, fancy red sports car. What did this guy need to prove to anybody? And like six pack abs and biceps, the whole shtick. Like, what did he need to prove to anybody? Well, one day he opened his phone and he saw a whole bunch of people liking some post about some discipline challenge. So he was like, oh, I guess I have to go and do this. Very reactive approach to life. And if you're going to be reactive, man, John C. Maxwell has a great
Mm.
quote about this. Reactive people are always repairing. Proactive people are always preparing. And that's what the world has become now is I'm going to open this phone up and this phone is going to tell me what to get excited about today. But that's not how successful people should go through life. It's very reactive and it's going to get you in a lot of trouble. So he went and did these things. And one day his wife walked out on him with the kids because she said, you spend half your time glued to your phone for the business. And then the other half of the time is spent doing these things. What about us?
Yeah.
And obviously it hurt their family, but it hurt me because I looked up to this guy. And listen, I love exercise. I love working out. I love, having structure and routine. And I love reading books and I love doing these things. I eat well, I get regular sleep, but he let the good get in the way of the great. It destroyed the great. And that drove me nuts. And so, discipline is not if I was to like, hey, personify discipline, everybody listening to this, oh, it's like some guy who looks like a Viking, he's got tattoos on his chest, and he's got an axe and he's rising out of an ice bath. Like, that's not actually discipline. I mean, everybody thinks discipline is being able to perform very difficult physical tasks.
Sure.
Some of those things are parlor tricks. Like sitting in an ice bath is a parlor trick. I don't have any, I don't practice doing it. But the other day, my wife and I went and did cold plunge and sauna back and forth as a date. We thought it was fun. And I went and sat in the coldest tub and I sat there for 3 minutes with no practice. Like, just because like, I'm just going to go do this
Yeah.
and I'm going to prove to everybody, like anybody can do this. It, and the thing with discipline is that a lot of people, the mistake that people make is they think that because they're disciplined in one area of their life, that every other area of life like just falls down like a domino, but it's
Mm.
not true. And the greatest example of this is Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods was the world's most disciplined golfer, maybe even the world's most disciplined athlete in 2007. 12 hours a day he spent on the range. At number one, you're already number one, you're still spending 12 hours a day. And then he's the most undisciplined man in the world at the same time.
Yeah.
Inside the same human being, you had the most disciplined and the most undisciplined, which proves to you that transferability of discipline is not
Mhm.
guaranteed.
Yeah.
So if you want to change something, it's not discipline that you need, it's systems. And James Clear talks a lot about this in Atomic Habits. And it's very simple. So we talk about effortless discipline systems because to be productive and to be successful, if you set up the right systems, you make the right actions almost automatic.
Mhm.
Like if you set the alarm on your phone and then you have all these, you have your book out and you have some food in the fridge to make your lunch
Yeah.
and you've already told your wife you're going to talk to her from 9:15 to 9:30 about the day. Like, okay, now you've prepared, you've eliminated the bad by with the alarm and you turn stuff off and you've prepared in advance to make the good stuff easier to do. And then if you have an accountability partner, which is the missing link in all of this, if you have somebody who, at 8:59, you have to text every night and say, I'm turning my phone off, and you don't want to disappoint this person,
Yeah.
that's the triumvirate that is going to change your life. Elimination of the bad, preparation for the good, and connection, accountability to follow through. That's all you need. You don't have to make things complex.
Yeah.
That is success in a nutshell. And so that's what I try to explain to people on the dark side of discipline because, earlier I said, everybody picture discipline in your head, the Viking guy.
Yeah.
But the person that, do you know who I say was the world's most disciplined man?
No. I
Okay,
quite
so
guessed.
so he died within the last 2 years. and he's like the complete opposite of what you would what the Viking man.
Charlie Munger.
Exactly.
Is he really?
Yes, you're good at my guessing
I'm
games.
from Omaha. That's where, you know.
Oh, there you go. You're a Midwestern guy. I'm on the same, plane as Midwestern folks. So Charlie Munger had everything that a man wanted: money, power, respect. That's like, let's be honest. That's what a man wants: money, power, respect. He did none of those things. He did no ice baths. He would laugh at that. He didn't exercise a day after he got out of the army when he was 18. He would eat a bag of peanut brittle. Like, he lived to 99.9 years old. And if you probably know a lot about Charlie, right? What did they do? They did nothing. They were sat on their hands. They're patients. He read all day. He is knowledgeable. I love the stories about Charlie. That I read in this. Have you read the book From Barista to Billionaire?
No,
It's really good. It's by a guy named Andrew Wilkinson, who's a Canadian guy,
yeah.
and he tells his story of going to Charlie's, and he's sold a lot of businesses in the design world. So you'll probably in the digital marketing stuff. So you get along
I
with
know
it
Andrew.
pretty well. And so he talks about going to Charlie's house, and Charlie's super excited about this new shirt that he's wearing because he used to buy shirts for $50 at Costco, but he found these $40 shirts that are the same quality, and he's wearing a $30 wristwatch. And
Yeah.
he was like 92 years old going to Costco board meetings on Alaska Airlines in economy. Like,
Yeah.
you want to talk about a guy who was running his own race, who was comfortable in his own skin. Was Charlie Munger, man.
Yeah.
And that's one of the big messages that we're trying to put in the book is you can go and you can chase other people's definitions of discipline, because these things that you see on the internet were just chosen by some person because a few of these things help them. And now they think you need to do all the things that help me. Well, that's, I wouldn't go to the doctor and say, hey, whatever medicine you gave the guy before, give it to me.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
You need to figure out where you want to get to in life. You need to build a straight line for success. And then you need to destroy all the distractions and detours that stop you from getting there. And that's it. That's all you have to do. And that's what Charlie did. And that's what we want to pass along to people.
That's so good. Man, I have so many more questions, but we may have to do 3 more episodes like you and Chris have done. We'll get to them eventually, but is there anything that we talked about a lot, but is there anything that we did not talk about that it's worth discussing, especially because you know who our audience is and you've worked with successful entrepreneurs in the past? Like, is there anything you want to leave with them or we haven't discussed yet?
There's a phrase that I'm telling everybody now, and every time I tell it, they all nod their head. And it's something that as an introvert doesn't naturally come to me. But the phrase is this, and it's kind of similar to Jim Rohn's, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. My quote is this: everything in life is easier when you know more good people.
Hmm.
I mean, I guess you could say it's just a longer version of it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
And it really truly is. And so because I say like 90% of the money I made because of people that were my friends that showed me how to do it or that partnered with me on things.
Yeah.
I was in the best shape of my life when I had a great training partner. And when I wanted to get married and when I needed to meet somebody, I went to the women I knew who had the largest social circles, and I said, introduce me to somebody.
Mm.
And that's how I met my wife. And everything, like this new book, it's going to sell more copies than all my other books combined because I met a guy who's an expert in book marketing. And then I got on this podcast because I knew Chris.
Yeah.
And Chris introduced me to you. And that's how I've gotten on most of the podcasts to promote my book. Everything is easier. If I only knew 10 people, I'd never be able to accomplish the things. And again, this is coming from a person with introverted tendencies who would rather stay in the hotel room than go to the convention center when you go. But you have to do that. And you can meet people online, like you and I are meeting for the first time today, through this podcast. But everything's just so much easier when you know more good people, and you can apply that to every area of life. So I would suggest to everybody, like, if you're in a hard place, it might just because you just don't know enough good people.
Mm.
And if you think there's no good people out there, you just need to get off Lonely Entrepreneur Island and you need to get your butt in the right rooms.
Amen to that. Well, I'm thankful for Chris connecting the two of us. I know this won't be the first or only conversation that we have. If people want to buy your book, if they want to get a hold of you, how can they do so?
Yeah, just go to Amazon for The Dark Side of Discipline and grab that one there. The Perfect Week Formula is also obviously on Amazon, and it's really the best time management book. They're all short books because I know that, people don't, first of all, most people don't even open the book. But those that do, you'll be able to get big lessons immediately from them. And then if someone wants to contact me, I'm on LinkedIn, Craig Ballantyne. And then also I use Instagram more. So Instagram at real Craig Ballantyne. Or if you're old school like me, just email me, Craig at Craig Ballantyne.
Love it. And we'll put everything down in the show notes for everybody if they want to get a hold of you. But Craig, I appreciate you coming on, sharing your wisdom, sharing your gold nuggets, and thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you.